the basic responses of I and I. Metamorphosis.
Keep listening.
In life I shall be the same, in death I shall be a terror.
Iman Blak, me no brown, me no white. Nazi Babylon stripe, you mad?
Guiding I eternally. Guide I. It's the voice that sets me free. Guide I.
Emerging from a cocoon into a caterpillar, from a caterpillar to a butterfly. The metamorphosis is here, is live. Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis, word, sound and power, music, drumming, current affairs, everything to grow and lift up your mind. Metamorphosis.
No more youths and youths for sale. We get wise and don't decide to change their style. Bobby wrong, keep your empty promises and your crooked smile. Metamorphosis, come with your thoughts, change your way of thinking. Metamorphosis, the change begins with you.
Men Apartheid, black men of Ethiopia, Timbuktu, Alexandria gave the light of civilization to this world. Ethiopia shall stretch forth our hands unto God, and princes shall come out of Egypt.
Guide I. It's the voice that sets me free. Guide I.
Good evening, Iman Blak.
Good evening.
This is Pauline from St. Mary. Calling to big you up on your program. I am a disciple. I've been there since almost the inception.
Guide I. It's the voice that sets me free.
I just you may have to tune into because, me always even watch someone that tell life is and stuff and that I have to see for later. I have to really listen to you first, you know what I mean?
One machikum bakhna Africa da fa bakhna kida fanya kida farafet one machiki bunjul kida fa bunjul one yande kesawai kida fa bunjul one machiki bunjul kida fa bunjul dafnin rafet yom wentamenda ingama getting dafnin rafet yom wentamenda ingara dafnin rafet yom wentamenda ingara did you know that's a richer Africa did you know that's a richer Africa, did you know? Said the whole world love it, did you know? Said the whole world love it. Be proud of your culture. Be proud of that what you got. Be proud.
Jambo, vipi, karibuni katika kipindi cha Doc Iman Blak. Kipindi chaitwa Metamorphosis. Jifundishe, elimika na mwelimiki.
Conquering Lion of Judah.
Those who can hear me, I say, do not despair, do not despair, do not despair.
A judgment, a judgment, a judgment, a judgment. I said this world was created in a circle, and true fear man live it in a square. And it a force and I in a triangle, and it seems like some of us no care. But me say hell I go pop down, yeah. Come take a look in at the future. Hell I go pop down, yeah. If mankind no change them good behavior, them a go build more prison, cause the mobs them a go loot. Them a fi build more shot because them soldiers a go shoot. Them nah build no machine, nah no water boat, cause no man no want fi plant, but them want fi reap the fruits. Hell I go pop down, yeah. Come take a look in at the future. Hell I go pop down, yeah. If mankind no change them good behavior, hell I go pop down, yeah. Come take a look in at the future. Hell I go pop down, yeah. If mankind no change them good behavior, no one knows the minute nor the hour, but vividly they go along misusing their powers, never satisfied, always wanting more, and the plight of the people they ignore. While them a run down, push me see the rat gun with the loot, and the big dog round the back, I go take away your boat. Cynical government a generate violence. Can't you see they got no conscience? Hell I go pop down, yeah. Come take a look in at the future. Hell I go pop down, yeah. If mankind no change them good behavior, hell I go pop down, yeah. Come take a look in at the future.
Take us away from Africa with the intention to steal our culture. The good for the post buy and say, humble yourself, my little one. Humble yourself, my children. Humble yourself. Oh, my brother, wa-da-da. Oh, wa-da-da. While you're the night, wa-da-da. Oh, wa-da-da. Me loving Africa, wa-da-da. Love my nation, my interpretation, love universe, wa-da-da. Oh, wa-da-da. Love in Africa, love in America, love in Canada, wa-da-da. Oh, wa-da-da. While you're the night, wa-da-da. Oh, wa-da-da. Every knee shall bend, every tongue shall take. Down in this valley, down in this valley, down in this valley of Jamaica. Where is your love, Jamaica? Where is your love, Jamaica? Where is your love, Jamaica? I can see your love, I can feel your love, trying to touch your love. I don't know about your love. Stop them the way to love one another. Wa-da-da. Oh, wa-da-da. Too higher than I need. Wa-da-da. Oh, wa-da-da. Black-eyed and spirit. Wa-da-da.
Tinastilin. Greetings. Metamorphosis on Styles FM. In living black, red, green, and gold. Dr. Iman Blak here, your host.
Chant down no Babylon, chant down Babylon, chant down Babylon, chant down Babylon. Give thanks and praise, give thanks and praise, give thanks and praise, give thanks and praise to the whole of man of creation.
Giving thanks and praises for health. Health first and foremost. And health means physical condition. Health means mental and psychological condition. Your health is first. And health again is not just about the physical. The important aspect of health really rests with mental health, psychological health, emotional health. Some may even want to say spiritual health. So I give thanks for health. And then as we begin to practice healthy lifestyles and healthy ways of eating and resting, we need to begin to focus on healthy ways of thinking. So the metamorphosis in this engagement, we also engage them in thinking about thinking. What really is thinking? Is there such a thing as backward thinking? Is there forward thinking? Is there lateral thinking? What is really thinking? So the metamorphosis in this thing wants to explore that as an aspect. And I also want to explore the powerful process or thought, ideology of divide and rule. And how is it has played such an effective role in the life of black people. The principle of divide and rule. And what are the thoughts? What is the thinking behind those principles? And who are the ones who benefit from such practices? So there's also the need to look forward also to the month that they defined as the month of Black History. And in the month of February, there will be a lot of excitement and celebration and dressing up and dressing down and speaking Africa and speaking about the ancestors and speaking about the culture. I want to present from now a perspective that may be discomforting to some. But I think we have been spending so much of our time trying to embrace culture that we have overlooked the power of heritage. And so I want to really put it forward now as a question. Is there a difference between our ancestors and our foreparents? Sound like words, but I want us to reflect on the time that requires for one to arrive with certain termination, certain destination. Is the concept of our ancestors the same as the concept of our foreparents? Which one is more ancient? The ancestors or the foreparents? We have to begin to examine the concept of time. And how do we locate these forces that we claim are within our reach? So we want to look at culture against, juxtapose against heritage. We want to look at the whole idea of thinking. What is it to be thinking backwards? What is the symbolism that is projected when you wear your hat backwards? Where did that practice come from? What does it mean symbolically and psychologically? The idea of being African is being claimed by many ones. Many of the people claiming Africans are also of European stock. So we have to look into this whole identity crisis that we are facing consistently. And let us look at the people who were uncovered in India, the black people who killed the missionary who came with this Jesus. And they have been there for thousands of years unmolested. Looking at them, you couldn't say that they're Africans. One thing you could say for sure that they were black people. So I want to know about the difference now between black culture and African culture, because we have over 50 African countries. So I want to work out closer in a defined way what really is African culture. And ultimately, what is the heritage of Africa? Metamorphosis.
At the bank of the beautiful river, in your journey, I say, right over there, right over there. Ice green and gold, it's the rainbow. Ice green and gold, it's the rainbow. Gold is the rainbow. Ice green and gold is the rainbow. The rainbow. Oh, the rainbow. The rainbow. Whoa. Again around the rainbow circle choke. Chanting again around the rainbow circle choke. The lion crown the king. The lion crown the king. In Addis Ababa.
Metamorphosis, Dr. Iman Blak here, Size FM. I want to begin by opening up the windows of thought, windows of our imagination, and to think about what it is to think. Because as a people, we're obviously suffering with issues as it relates to how our brain operate. We have demonstrated to the world our superiority in our physical activities. But there seems to be some serious issues and problems when it comes to thinking. And I'm saying that within our education system in the Western world, from the days of the plantation till now, there has never really been, I think, a course that is geared towards helping a student know how to think. and what really is the process of thinking. We may have some ideas about breathing because they go into the respiratory system and they tell us about oxygen coming in and what's coming out through the cells and carbon dioxide and all of these things. We have a very good insight into breathing and the other senses. Hearing, we have broken that down to tell you about the eardrum and the liquid and what causes us to lose our balance, and very, very advanced, knowledgeable when it comes to those senses. But when it comes to the brain sense, the sense of thinking, everything shut down. And it's like there is no way, nothing to engage the brain with the process of examining how it thinks. So this is an attempt now to open that door and open a window in the mind and in the brain to think about the process called thinking. And this is something that can be done in a backward way. Or is there a way that one can think forward? So we have to see it now as an activity now. An activity. But what is the nature of this activity? And how is it one can engage in this activity to bring consciousness? To bring consciousness to self and to awaken the I that is within. So what is this process? And what is this organ that we're asking once and once to look into? And what is this thinking thing? Because if you reflect in your own life, there was a time in your childhood when you never even know so you have a brain in your head. Because much of your actions were dealt upon just how you felt, your feelings. So the idea of thought and thinking is something that African people, black people in the plantation, it's something that was beaten out of us. Because coming from the culture of black Africa, where thought was a power, and we had a god named Thoth, the god of thought. That is how serious I was about the powers of thinking. That we had a god that symbolized thought. So is that something that I think we have to awaken out of our slumber as it appears we are in, and activate the brain to think. Now, one might say, man, we think about everything, but how? How do you approach your thinking? Is it from a logical perspective? Is it from emotional perspective? How do you arrive at your own thoughts? It's something that I should really be very versatile with. How do we deal with our own thinking? Because watch me now. If you really look into the history of the earth and the whole process of enslavement, besides capturing the physical body of an individual, what is important in slavery is capturing the individual's thought processes, his thinking ability, what people may gently call the mind. So I am saying to the item now, what is the foundation of thinking? I want us to be able to exercise now this ability without fear. And if you exercise thinking without fear, your conclusions will be much different. So I'm saying to the item now, backwards thinking as an example, and how it is manifested in our everyday way of actions. Even in the present Jamaican society, where we are suffering from something that the government and everybody has coined a phrase that represents what is happening. Them say we're suffering from crime and violence. And nearly all the population, maybe except Iman, and maybe a 2 or 3 others, don't accept that as a way to approach the problem. Iman suggesting that is a backwards thinking approach. And to justify what I mean by backwards thinking approach is that you have a problem. And the essence of the problem is not what you're focusing on. You're focusing on what an effect of the problem. So there's cause and there's effect. And if you focus on crime and violence from that perspective, that is not cause and effect. Because it's not the cause, it's not the crime that is causing the violence. But rather it's the other way around. It is violence that is causing the crime in the society. So this backwards approach, this backwards thinking will never bring a solution. Because the approach is to attack the effect. And so the cause is untouched. And in the Jamaican situation, the cause is the most serious thing that should be faced and tackled. And that is violence. And it is violence that is the Jamaica's greatest problem. And because those who are leading are thinking backwards, they are projecting it in a reverse format, so there's no solution for the people. And violence is something that is not just overnight in Jamaica. Violence is something that is spewed and fed. And it is deeper than just the black population when it comes to violence. Because we were brought here under violent conditions in the first place. And before we were brought here, this was a violent island dominated by buccaneers and pirates. So until we begin to look at the situation from the correct perspective, which is right way round rather than the cat in front of the donkey, we should be having programs and the society should be geared to how do we resolve the violence. And the violence here is deep. It is individual. It is communal. It is within relations. And violence, when you begin to sort it out now, is what we talk about when we say we need social intervention. And social intervention can be about giving a little man a corner to sell something on. It's about attacking the root of violence, which is basically anger. This is a very, very angry society. And the anger is based upon, whole of the anger is based upon the injustice that the people feel. So we could not fool ourselves with this continuous backwards thinking. Just an example. And I have a few more samples to demonstrate how is it this negative way of approaching thoughts don't bring answers. And beyond that, how is it that we accept things that are impossible and hold them to be true? How do we reverse the process of procreation? That it is out of the male comes forward a female. How do we hold that in our thinking? Metamorphosis.
Jah be praised. The goose and the ghost, let Jah be praised. The Daniel Lamb, let Jah be praised. Let him be praised. Let him be praised. You better let him be praised. He watereth the hills from his chambers, and the earth is satisfied, so satisfied. He maketh the grass to grow for animals. Jah made the herb for man. He made the herb for man. Jah made the herb for man. Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like grass, and they shall wither like
shatter, batter, and flatter. As the smoke is driven away, Jah, drive them away. As the wax melted, let them be melted, Jah Jah. Beer, let Jah be praised. Daniela, let Jah be praised. Nigusa Nagas, let Jah be praised. You better let him be praised. Let him be praised. You better let him be praised. I said let him be praised. Lightning, earthquake, brimstone, all of fire,
Heritage, I man say more powerful than culture. Heritage. And so basically now, I want to address the divide and rule principle that is deep in Jamaica now, amongst the population, 95% black people. We know our story. We know the plantation story. And we also know the story of the Englishman emancipating themselves from the conditions that they put us in. But from that moment onwards, the population has been splintered by various forces. The religious forces split the population into all these denominations, which is the greatest divide in the African population right here. The denominational thing. We have these little fiefdom controlled by these little chieftains with their flocks, and they're each creating their own source of money and living high on the hog. And then we have this aspect of the forces of resistance. The forces now that have been resisting the British and the Spanish from day one. And these forces now, I think, need to look at themselves a little better. Are the descendants of these forces? Because holding on to grudges and disputes that happened 400 years ago amongst ourselves is backwards from my point of view and non-progressive. So what I really say now is this. If we really understand heritage, and realize the black heritage that we all share, then when we look at the struggle from the point of the resistance, then there is a group that from the 1400s who initially decided that they wouldn't be part of the Spanish and moved to the mountains and got the name Cimarron or the Maroon or Maroons. We have understand what is the genesis of this term and who were the first set of persons given this identity. And it's not just a Jamaica thing for a person to be considered to be marooned. Marooned communities develop straight across the Caribbean and other places where there was oppression and slavery. So the Jamaican situation is not much different, but our reaction to the whole thing is very, very divisive, because those initial persons who took away themselves from the Spanish were African people, we are told. And we know that the Moors, who were black people from the Western Africa, were the founders of the Spanish culture and therefore had their influence in the missions of Columbus and ultimately had their presence on this island. So we have those persons who take away themselves. We have others who fight practically from the level of the plantation that would bring out people like Sharp and Bogle, active resistance against oppression. And so we also have a group emerging later on in time in the 30s, Rastafari, who would also represent a segment of the resistance. So what I say to them now, we have all these various arms of the resistance to slavery. But in 2019, I'm still hearing disputes and divides about who is Maroon and who is Rasta and who is African and who is Jamaican. And like everybody ignoring says one pigmented people. It's one people of pigment. So this idea now of Maroons being a separate race is an alien concept. It has no foundation in anything called reality. The Maroon developed out of a condition. So there's no race of people called Maroons. And there's no groundation for people who are Rastafarian to be claiming that Maroons sell out to British and therefore Maroon not Maroon not black, Maroon not conscious. Maroon is what? So it's a set of divisive practices amongst yourselves. It's like trying to determine which group is superior to the other group when all of us as black people in the same condition. Still under the domination of the European. Still under the domination of the American. So I'm not Maroon thing, I'm not glorifying Maroon as if it's the people special from I black people. Nor should those who are Africans see themselves different from those who are marooned. The whole way is black people. So the whole idea of who is more African and who is more cultural is them thing that causing the divide, And the man who divide with sits in Washington and sits in London and sits in the Vatican and drink champagne and celebrate. So I could cut out this foolishness about Maroon and who sign who and whose brother never do this and all of them foolishness there. Keeping up, festering all kind of feelings that have no foundation. It's about time Rastafari and the Maroon people, communities, and all African-oriented people and those who recognize black culture put away those divides and make a focus on the blackness and make a focus on the pigmentation as a foundation. What is historically, we don't know what the British wrote. We don't know who signed anything. We have no evidence of anything. So we can let it go and come fresh. Metamorphosis.
What do they fight against?
Yeah, so according to Peter Touch, within that music, it's hundreds of years. And I've been thinking within the same philosophy. Yeah, we've been thinking within the same philosophy. A philosophy that has been given and forced upon us by alien conquerors. So what then is the nature of this philosophy that owes us into the dimension of backward thinking? It's a philosophy that makes us think backwards. And in this backward thinking now, you find that it is really false beliefs that we hold on to. And it's these false beliefs that we have to examine. So, belief systems now come to play. And belief systems are always set against knowledge systems. And I'm suggesting that people who operate along knowledge system tend to be more forward in them thinking. The people who seem to operate along the system of belief, there's a lot of doubt and a whole heap of hoping in them thinking, but hardly any manifestation in the practicality. So, we throw out some ways now and some notions, because there are ways that you can think in what they call a concrete way. And you can also think in what you call an abstract way. These are just two other ways now, as we're going to mention it, that people can think. Because ultimately, we want to arrive at the point where our thinking becomes what you call critical. But then, where do we begin to examine the concept of thinking? When does a child begin to think? When did you, as an individual in your life, begin to think? And what does it mean to think? And again, coming from a plantation society and a population of enslaved persons, thinking was written and put into the zero zone. Because thinking is a process that leads to certain activity now, And if you're trapped and enslaved, one of the critical ways of holding that person as slave is to shut down them thinking. And if you shut down the person's ability to think, they will still function, but they function more along the lines of what you program them into and what they believe. So examine yourself. Are you really manifesting thoughts out of yourself, or are you just expressing the beliefs that have been planted into you? Because if you're just expressing the beliefs, you're not really thinking. It's like you ask somebody something and they must answer you with a cliche. And you ask them something and they give you another cliche. They have not thought for a moment. They are responding out of memory, recitation. We have to shake up ourselves as a people because there is something wrong in our thinking. Thinking backwards. There was a time when the West Indies cricketers were described by the Englishmen as lateral thinkers. Why we couldn't do certain things. So they have ways of thinking. And we have to begin to check into our own ability. Do we think logically? Do we think emotionally? Do our ideas connect logically? Metamorphosis.
No sun will shine in my day today.
Yes, there is a well-recognized European philosopher who brought the phrase together. His phrase is that gives him his mark in history. He said, "I think, therefore I am." Yeah, I think, therefore I am. So the I, which is the center of consciousness, the I, which is the center of reality, once the I recognizes its existence by being able to say I am, it only arrives at that capacity and ability through thinking. So it's something that is natural, you know. It's a divine attribute of man. The ability to manipulate the abstract and to create thoughts. And these thoughts can be connected until they develop into ideas. But the connection of these thoughts must be done with a sequence, in a sequential way. And there must be logic at the foundation of all of these thoughts. So thinking, of course, is advanced when we go into the dimension of reasoning, because that's what's really happening within. Thinking is a sort of internal reasoning. And within the reasoning now, there is analysis. There is comparison. The reasoning becomes critical. So, until we take ourselves to that point, where we begin to have more regard for our powers of thought and begin to respect the energy that comes out of our thinking, we literally leave thinking up to other people. And then we await their conclusions. And we jump on them and say, yeah, because such and such says so. But what has been the process is that that individual went through to arrive at their conclusions. They also thought about it. So it's just like when we're reading any text, any manuscript, it is the thinking of the individual that is being expressed. Now, the plantation society, as I said, never encouraged thinking amongst the black people, because when you begin to think, one of the things you begin to do is ask questions. Because it becomes natural and curiosity is aroused, and so you begin to advance your thinking power. You begin to ask questions and you begin to learn to frame the questions in order to achieve solutions to whatever may be the problem. So black people now, somehow when it comes to problem solving through thinking, we start to surrender. And we think it's only certain people can provide a solution, especially if them don't look black. We think that these are the persons who have this divine gift and power to think. We don't give ourselves that ability and that them props there, because we think that it is too advanced for I and I. But if we recall through our heritage and through our genetic abilities and our creations, we have seen that the pyramids and the calendars of ancients were manifestations of the thoughts of the African. So we must know, thinking is something that if we get serious grip of, it will help us to define our destiny. Because our thinking and our destiny are related. We seem to be more dependent on feelings and hope. And as a people now for the last 2,000 years, we seem to have abandoned the thinking process. And we have turned our lives to the concept of faith and belief. The world is run by science. The world is run by power. The world is run by the military. The world is run by economics. Those things have to be thought out. Now, the brain again, ultimately is a site that we have to awaken and become conscious of how the brain operates. One of the elements that the brain generates are waves. And if you sit by the ocean and you watch the waves come in, every time the wave comes to the shore, it deposits a certain amount of energy. That energy was developed by the wind pushing the water. So waves become a feature of the ocean, where the brain also manifests waves. And these waves are just like the waves of the ocean. They come from deep internally and they manifest and they come to the shore. Energy. And what we talk about waves now, those waves are not water waves. Those waves are what we call thought waves. So there are some people who are sensitive to those waves because their brain is highly active and highly alert. We're saying to the people them generally know that everybody has a potential to activate the powers of them brain and to engage in thinking and thinking without fear. And the fear now comes through the beliefs that have been put into us. And the ultimate belief and the ultimate fear is the fear of hell. So the black people know, because we have been programmed and conditioned to fear hell, we are also afraid to think. Because you don't want to offend. Yeah, you don't want to offend the guardian of your life by thinking. But I'm saying to the item, the liberation comes not through more money in your pocket necessarily, because more money doesn't transform you to a positive thinking being. What is it that separates man from the animal kingdom? It's the power of thought. Talking about black man now, because the European white man considers himself to be in the animal kingdom. But the highest power in man is the brain. And the European has not wasted time to manifest those brain powers. It is time the African now begin to exercise brain power. Brain power through scientific thinking, through the power of logic, through reasoning, critical thinking, metamorphosis.
Planning a party, club night out, stage show, a gospel concert, or even a business sales event? Let Styles FM be a part of your promoting tool. Take advantage of our low-priced promotion packages with commercials, interviews, giveaways, reviews, and much more. We have special offers when you mix and match and bundle your options. Contact us at 876-286-9216 or 439-5160. Styles FM for the most effective way to exploit your marketing dollar.
Architects, draftsmen, and surveyors, get your drawings printed in high-quality professional standards. We can satisfy your printing needs. Whether it is for presentation to your clients or for submitting building and subdivision application, make it VJ Printing Services. Whether drawing by hand or with computer-aided softwares, we will plot your negatives and print the copies as you need. We do high-quality white paper printing that is water-resistant and never fades, unlike traditional blueprint. For more information, call VJ Printing at 893-2266.
DIB Black Factory and Hardware Supplies Limited, your home for the widest selection of building materials and hardware supplies in Portland. Shop everything from plumbing to electrical to home decor. Find unbelievable prices on tiles, toilets, basins, faucets, shower enclosures, vanity sets, doors, windows, lumbers, and much more. Get up to 25% off at DIB Hardware the last Friday and Saturday of every month with their mega month-end sale. Visit any 3 locations in Portland: Buff Bay, St. Margaret's Bay, and Port Antonio. Call 993-4415. DIB Hardware. Your foundation starts with us.
Business operators, local and overseas, this announcement is for you.
Styles FM is an internationally known radio network with worldwide listeners in over 120 countries.
From our studio in Port Antonio, Jamaica, to the ears of the people in your community, our listeners can be your new customers.
Styles FM is an economical, efficient, and effective advertising option for your business.
No matter the size of your business, there's always growth potential. Styles FM provides the customer reach needed to realize that upward movement.
So procrastinate no more. Advertising is a must.
For more details on how to advertise with Styles FM, visit www.stylesfm.com or email info@stylesfm.com or call us on 876-518-2399.
Styles FM, the world listens.
Clifford Guest House, sponsor of Metamorphosis on Monday nights from 9 p.m. to 12 midnight with Dr. Iman Blak. Located at 15 Queen Street, Port Antonio, that's Titchfield Hill, they offer accommodations for up to 1 month. Call them at 285-0610 for more information.
Dr. Amos Wilson suggests that the only way you can capture a race of people and have them under submission for so long is if you have them thinking backwards. Yeah, if you look at it, man, something has to be happening in the people's thinking ability or lack of it. Why a race of people can be captured globally under certain isms and ideologies. So what is it about our thinking that needs to be reversed? Enough things need to reverse. And I'm thinking that those who are in government and those who are leaders, they know exactly what is what. But because of the ability to earn and gain personal wealth, they continue to run the system the way it is. Jamaica is a very violent place because the people them are angry. Them vex, them double vex, them well vex about everything. Everything. Everything, every service that is supposed to be provided for, where all the money goes, the debts, the robbery, the crimes. And these crimes now are in high offices. So the violence that I'm speaking about now is what is being engineered and propagated by the behavior also at the very top. So look at the teaching now, why the people are angry. This is from the days of the emancipation until now. They teach you in school that we all have basic needs. They tell you this. And you're learning this now after emancipation, after plantation. Basic needs. And they outline them, food, clothes, and shelter. And nearly everybody can recite that without even thinking. Without thinking. You recite that. Food, clothes, and shelter. And if you begin to apply thinking, you have to begin to look at the words and the ideas individually and slow down and break away from cliches and look at what the words mean and the sequence. Food, clothes and shelter, everybody out there program on that as the basic needs, and the food is put up front. It's a backwards teaching again. It's a backwards teaching because that type of teaching keeps the people then without land. The focus is not on land, the focus is on food. If we were to reverse it and put it as it's supposed to be, where shelter is the priority, the first priority, food would fall in automatic. So we wouldn't be suffering in the country now with these squatters and people losing them sense of value. People who have been on the island for hundreds of years, descendants of plantation slaves, are still called squatters. Because the teaching don't encourage the people to secure land. They don't show you the importance of shelter because they want you to pay rent. If the focus was on shelter, everybody in the country would focus on having a piece of land. And in today's 2019, if every Jamaican had a quarter of land, there'd be more loyalty to the country. People will feel tied and committed to the island. But the people don't own any of the land. The land is owned primarily by the church and by the government, the Queen, Council, and the Crown. So the population now, which is what I and I have, the black population, left to live in harsh places that are now called squatters. And then they talk about crime and violence. And crime is a problem. The problem is not the crime. The problem is the violence against the people. It's the violence that the education system promotes by teaching backwards. And it's also the violence that the people meet when they try to find land to live on. Only to hear that this land belongs to Mr. Such and such and such. And him have a much 100,000 acres of land. Or this belongs to the church. Or this belongs to the government. So the violence in Jamaica is the problem. Don't make them fool about the crime and violence thing. It's the violence. And when they rob the tilly, rob the kitty in Petrojam, it's violence that. That is violence. And unless we begin to punish in a serious way those who commit the violence, we're going after the wrong people. We're after the youths who fire the gun, and we're not going after those who bring the guns into the country. We're doing enough things here backwards, and the world is watching. Metamorphosis. it's time to rise. It's time to rise. I want to raise up our power of thinking. That divine gift that comes from within. The brain power, the seat of consciousness is the brain. Now, one of the ways we can examine thinking is to look at the way how we manifest our creativity in the real world, in the practical world. So there is thinking that is concrete, and there's thinking that is abstract. And the difference now is just simply as it suggests. Concrete thinking is thinking that leads to tangible, practical results. Concrete, in other words, it manifests in reality. So I think about creating a table. And in thinking about creating that table, then I must manifest certain operations. I must gather certain materials. I must measure up certain angles. Need certain amount of equipment. When all of those things are come together, I can manifest a table that you can actually sit on or write on. That table existed previously in my thoughts. It was in my brain that the image was created. And in that part of the brain I used to create that image of the table was my imagination. So we have some what they call faculties or some facilities within the brain to use to generate activity. So there is concrete thinking. There is also abstract thinking, where the thoughts remain in the abstraction. These thoughts remain as ideas. An example of an abstract thought is love. There is nothing tangible. There is nothing physical. It's an idea that has to be expressed now through all sorts of manifestations in behavior. So there is concrete thinking. There is abstract thinking. And we must try to make a distinction. Because when we are reading, we must know when we are reading things that are based upon abstractions and when things are based upon concrete things. One of the most powerful abstract ideas that has been put on the black people is the idea of the creator. Yeah, the idea of an almighty creator is an idea that exists in the abstract dimension. So we have to be knowledgeable about thinking and be able to exercise our thoughts fearlessly, whether we're in the dimension of concrete thinking or whether we're thinking about abstract ideas. Justice is another abstract idea. It's nothing that is tangible or nothing that is visible. It's something that is interpreted and manifested through a certain type of behavior. So as a people now, we must begin to take control now of our own thinking. Because for centuries, literally, other people have been thinking for us. And so within the black man, within the Africans, we have a lot of African people, but their brains are European. They have European thinking brains inside African black bodies. In Jamaica, we have no difference. We have more British brains inside black bodies. And now it's becoming very Americanized. A lot of American brain within black bodies. So I am saying the thinking ability lies within each individual. And thoughts are not a monopoly on any set of people. Two people can think of the same thought at the same time. Identical thoughts can manifest in different parts of the world because the brain, it is the brain that does the thinking. And we have to recognize the link between our thinking now and our creativity. So when people lose the ability to think, they literally become slaves. Slaves to those who are thinking. And thinking doesn't require muscling. It's about connecting thoughts and transforming thoughts into ideas. And connecting ideas in logical ways that they can manifest itself into reality. So there's no group of people who have any premium on thinking. And reading increases and encourages one's ability to think. Because in reading you have to deal with ideas and words as they organize to produce meaning. And to get the proper meaning, you have to have the logical connection. So there was a time years ago when I was introduced for the first time to philosophy that they had these circles that they call Venn diagrams. And you put each statement in one of the circles and you see how they overlap to come to the conclusions. Because it's almost like mathematics. Right? It's like a mathematics. That reasoning becomes like maths. And literally, it is mathematics. Because the logic must be in the sentences. There are also what we call implications, wherein you can draw meaning from what somebody says from what they didn't respond to what them said, even though they never say it. So, for example, if a one come to you and say, "I am thirsty," the suggestion is that they want something to drink. You agree, Cass? If somebody says to you, "I'm thirsty," you have to say something they want to drink. If somebody says to you, "I'm thirsty," okay, if somebody says to you, "No, I want something to drink," does it mean that I'm thirsty? Not necessarily. So, the language now, and what we call implication, we have to be able to reason and become conscious of what certain statements imply. That's another part of the reasoning. A lot of people get frustrated now in working through reasoning because they just want to jump to a conclusion. But this is where we learn to slow down. This is where the Rasta man used to be well recognized as a man who would have owed some reasoning for some long hours. Because it's in the reasoning now we come to a knowledge of both of our individual reasoner and of the reasoning. We come to a better knowledge of ourselves when we engage in reasoning. And to reason, you have to be thinking. And there is thinking that is driven by emotions, and there's thinking that is driven by the intellect. So if we begin to work out those things within our own selves, because emotional thinking usually lead to all sort of loud noise and sometimes become very physical. If we begin to reason in a more intellectual way. So what I mean now down the road, no, we have to stop calling man idiot. Because that is the biggest strike at a man's intellectual ability when you call him an idiot. Yeah, we're talking about healing ourselves. Metamorphosis. Yeah, one of the first ways to begin to upgrade your thinking is to sort of practice to be more observant. I don't mean watch people, you know. I mean watch yourself. Yeah, watch yourself. And look at it, how you are reacting to people. And is it the people why you are acting the way you're acting, or is the reaction coming out of yourself? Is it coming out of your thinking? So you have to first of all come to grips with your own thinking, your own thought processes. Realize that when you think, you release vibrations. And those vibrations leave the brain and go outward into the ocean of time. And at the same time, others' thoughts will also come to you in terms of vibrations. So we begin to realize that our thinking now is like operating like a radio station. We're releasing vibrations that equate to the way how we feel, and it connects to what we are thinking. Our thoughts and our emotions and our intellect all manifesting through vibrations. So when we look at that ability now, and we begin to observe the environment, we begin to observe things in nature. We begin to observe things like the rainbow, for example. And we begin to search out for cause and effect through the process of thinking. And in that thinking process now, we have become very critical. So we have to do what we call some analyses. We have to begin to analyze. We have to also begin to synthesize. It's all about moving ideas and moving thoughts around, but without fear. So, in other words, now, this is a process that people think that you have to only go to university, and when you get to university now, you suddenly become a great thinker. There's no such process like that. Every individual have the capacity to be what they call a great thinker. All you have to do is exercise your powers of thought and realize it within. So, for example, we see the rainbow. And those who are unwilling to think through what could bring that rainbow into effect, leave it to superstition and beliefs. Those who think about it begin to draw the elements that comprise the whole setting. They begin to realize, first of all, there's water. They realize that there's sunshine. And when they begin to analyze these events and these effects, they realize that it's really the sunlight and the rain that is causing these vibrations of color to manifest themselves. Is that no man get up and talk about this is a commitment to something abstract into the sky that will watch over. Nothing like that in reality. The reality is that it can be observed and can be explained through the process of thought, scientific, logical thoughts. So if we begin to apply this more to our everyday activity, we will use a logical, scientific approach to the things that we are doing, especially when it comes to identifying cause and effect. How do we make that connection? So basically, if you don't think for yourself, someone will think for you. And if you're given a book that guides your thinking, then you have to begin to question the nature of those who created that book, because it's another brain, it's other thinkers that put these books together. So the book that is dominant in the thoughts of black people in the Western world is the Bible. And the Bible and its words control thousands and thousands, if not millions of brains in how they think and in what they think. And it's very unlikely for people who are captured by those words to really think for themselves, because that book provides thoughts and solutions to nearly all issues in the thought form. But in the practical world, these issues are not resolved by the way those thoughts put themselves forward. In other words, If you are poor in the world today, being poor is not a state of jollification. Being poor is literally a crime, especially if it is manifested and created by those who are in higher powers. The Africans on the plantation, we are told in history, were brutalized, those who demonstrated leadership. And thinkers generally become leaders. And so there is a fear amongst the black population to generate and produce leaders. And we're talking about thinkers. And if you're a thinker within the framework of the colonial framework, you're not really a thinker. We need thinkers who are recognizing our condition as a people, and we begin to think our way out of our situation. So I am saying in this program, we are sleeping as it relates to our power of thinking. It is the I that is at the center. The fear of going to hell often stops people from thinking. The fear of thinking beyond the physical sends a lot of people into a state of panic. But we have physics as a science, where we begin to study energy and the laws of movement, of attraction and repulsion. So we recognize through our thoughts that they are non-physical forces. Physics. And as we think deeper, we realize that they are metaphysical forces. Forces that deal with the universe and the cosmos that surround us. So make a break away from the fear of thinking, because through that we may lose a soul, and realize that by thinking we actually elevate the soul, which is at the seat of our consciousness. Metamorphosis.
I
So over talking and going on and on about the concept of thinking. What is it that what is it that an individual really thinks with? Because the brain is a big organ. So when I say the brain, is it everything? Is it the whole brain that a person thinks with? Or is there something within the brain that is the master of thinking? Because how do we really think? And what is it that defines a thinking person? We know that there are sense organs, basically. We're made up by sense organs. We know that sensations come to the brain through the eyes and the ears and the nostrils and the skin and the tongue, the organs of sensation. So these sensations now pick up these stimuli in the environment and it all comes to the brain. But what happens when it gets to the brain? How does that, what is the next stage after the data gets to the brain? Some comes to the eye, some comes to the ear. What is it that coordinates and centralizes and organizes the data that comes to the brain? Where they? Which part of the brain do that? Because we have to find the thing in ourselves, the thing that works. What is it inside the brain that gives us the ability to think? What is the seat of our thinking power? Because we hear that people get a gunshot and survive and them still thinking. But at what level? And what is it that is within each individual that we can say is the seat of your thoughts? So we're asking each individual now to look into themselves, I want to look into yourself. What you say? What is it that is looking? When we say look into yourself, what is doing the looking? And what really is the self that you're looking into? So I try to really identify the source of our thinking now, What aspect of your being thinks? Is it the self? Is it the self that think? Or is the part where you call me? Does one think with them spirit? Do you think with your soul? What is it you think with? Because if you don't know what you're thinking with, you really can't generate the power, You just go through on a kind of automatic. You just run from automatic reflexes, what some people want to call instincts. We have to lift our ability to communicate through our ability to think. So where is the higher level thoughts? No, where it come from within the brain. So I'm saying to the item now, when all the sensations come in, there is a center that it goes to. And that center is controlled by a force. That force, I'm telling you, is the eye. It is the eye that has the ability to generate thinking power. So if your eye closed, you're not thinking. You're running upon instructions and you're running upon automatic. And for the eye to think, the eye must be able to conceptualize the eye as an existing being. That's why we can say I am. And when you say I am to yourself 2 or 3, 4 times, it begins to register. That the I becomes an entity almost unto itself. We have to be able to disconnect now, and to liberate the elements within that we know how to put them together again. So say the I is a cause of your thinking. And if your eye is under captivity, if you have surrendered the I to any other force, you're not thinking for yourself. Let me say it again. If you surrender the power of the I to any other force, then you are not thinking for yourself. And it is significant why I say this, because within Christendom, part of the driving philosophy behind Christendom is surrendering yourself. It's surrendering the I. That another force can come in and direct your being. So you no longer maintain the power to think. You have surrendered the thinking power and you are volunteering now to become a slave. And you hear them say, they'd rather be a slave to Jesus than anything else. And what is the Jesus? What is the Jesus? What's the difference between a slave and a servant? Metamorphosis. Black Uhuru asking the question, what is life? What do you think is life? What are your thoughts on life? Because what you think about life will have an influence on what you think of death. So here we go with our thinking. What do you think of life? And here it goes into our whole ideology and programming given to us by the Europeans. Because they are the ones who have given us these answers now, in written format and in books. What is life? And ultimately they are the same ones who are telling us what is death. So I am really responding in an indirect way now to WhatsApp. Person don't leave them name, but them say good night. And the question is, some people fear death. Is it the thinking of the mind or what? And do you think they should not? So here we go. We're thinking, so we are free to question. And what is it that the Romans on the plantation try to do is stop us from asking the right questions. Questions of what they call of depth. Questions that bring forward answers that open up knowledge. So what do we think of life? In the Western Christian world, the notion of life and death is played out in the book called the Bible. It is in that book that people get their basic ways of thinking about life and death. As a matter of fact, it's in that set of writings most people get them ideas about how life, quote unquote, began. So people, when you ask them to think about origins, they begin to quote the Bible. Because their thinking is only limited to what is written in the Bible about origins. So in order to expand our knowledge about origins, we'd have to begin to explore texts and literatures that is more ancient than the writings of the Bible. Because life has existed long before there was any book. And life has existed long before there was any writings. Life existed before there was even man, if we want to get to that point of defining what is life. So when we talk about the atoms, that is also life. When we talk about fish and sea life, that is life. So it depends on how your perception of what is life and what you have been encouraged to think. Because at the broadest level now, life is energy. Because for anything to sustain life or to be described as having life properties, it must have energy. And when you realize that power of energy, which is all inclusive, meaning energy really has no destructive or creative properties. It has always existed. Now, how many people can think about energy in that way? How many people can think about life as always existing? How many people can think that life really has no beginning? That life has no end? It's about thinking. But when you get locked into Christendom, you're not encouraged to think. Because if you think outside and beyond what the book says, then you go into the dimensions of fear. And ultimate fear, as people tend to hold on to, is the fear of death. So we have to think about what is this thing called death, because as far as the world has recorded, no one has experienced this experience and has come forward to record it. So what we see is something happening to everything around us. Plants, animals, all experiencing these changes. And if we think about the process, and you think about nature, you begin to realize that it's a part of the cycle of no beginning and no end, the cycle of transformation, where energy transformed from one state of energy to another. Whether it's from heat to electricity to magnetism to solar energy to consciousness. So be it. It's true transformation. So once we begin to think and think logically and think creatively and to think positively, we begin to get beyond the fears that are created by superstition, by dogma, and intentionally organized and orchestrated by the colonizing forces to control the thinking of the black population. So it is the thinking of black people have been literally chained to God. Where all movement and all thinking is now controlled by sin. It's a very serious thing to reverse. Metamorphosis.
Dreadlocks!
Can we agree? Can we agree that, let's say, everybody was born a baby? Can we agree to that? Everybody was born a baby. And can we further agree that all babies have a brain? And can we agree further that all the writings that we read come from the brains of individuals, whether they be females or males? So everything we read, everything that is put down as literature is an expression of somebody's brain. They're thinking. So, as African people, as black people now who have been carted off into the West and put under these subjections of the Roman Empire and the English language, we are told that we must have reverence for certain writings. Remember now, all these writings are coming out of the brains of man, thinking men. But we are told now to have a great amount of subjection and submission to specific writings. Because not only are these writings coming from the brain of men, they're coming from the brain of inspired men. So now the thinking now is not normal now. And so the writing is not normal. These men are inspired men. And so they have inspired thinking. Now, what the heck is this? What is inspired thinking? We have to check these things now, because we have been reading and been, imbibing these literatures and writings for centuries, coming out of the brains of men. So, as an individual now who recognize that the nation of the black people have been moving backwards, have been held backwards in our thinking, we have to check everything. All the things that can be possible cause. So, backward thinking. And we're asking individual people to check themselves. Yeah. Music.
Are you seeking a place to rent, seeking employment, or have a job vacancy? Are you selling a car or having a garage sale? Then come see us. Let Styles do the advertising for you, and you'll be on your way in no time. Contact us at 876-286-9216 or 439-5160. Advertising Style. Advertise with Styles. For the best quality in sound reinforcement and backlining, Native Audio. We have professional engineers with over 20 years of experience. So call us and we'll take care of your parties, wedding receptions, barbecues, conferences, and small stage shows. Crystal clear sound, Native Audio. Our prices are the best. Call us at 871-5212. That's 871-5212. Native Audio. We make your events audible.
This is Ricardo Suave, inviting you to tune into Smoothic, the show for the ladies, with DJ Prestige, from 9 to midnight every Tuesday on Styles 96.1 FM, Portland's best.
Guess what? Styles FM has a new business number for you to call, text, and now WhatsApp. 518-2399. To advertise your business and events, call, text, or WhatsApp us on
518-2399. 518-2399.
Don't forget, 518-2399.
For complete auto repairs and services, come to Akon Auto Technology, located at 33 Bumble Crescent, Port Antonio, Jamaica. We offer specialist services in wheel alignment and wheel balancing, brake drum and disc rotary servicing, state-of-the-art ultrasonic cleaning and testing of your fuel injectors. We also stock an assorted range of auto service parts, tires, and motorcraft batteries. If we don't have it, we will source it for you. Call us at 876-715-5205 or email AkonAutoTech16@gmail.com. Akon Auto Technology, beyond the typical auto mechanic shop.
This feeling is taking over me. I'm so excited.
Feel the euphoria.
Tuesdays from 5 to 9 p.m. with the Master Mixer Musical Maestro Digital Team.
Giving a total satisfaction with melodies and memories by the score. With the widest selection of genres and hits. So you don't know that program you turn up, you know. So you know Patek's a full dance, the one you slap with.
Digital and we are party. Yeah, we flawless. Euphoria the program. Every Tuesday.
5 to 9. Every Tuesday.
With the Musical Maestro Digital Team.
Clifford Guest House, sponsor of Metamorphosis on Monday nights from 9 p.m. to 12 midnight with Dr. Iman Blak. Located at 15 Queen Street, Port Antonio, that's Ditchfield Hill, they offer accommodations for up to 1 month. Call them at 285-0610 for more information.
Metamorphosis rolling through into this dimension of thought and thinking. There are some persons when you talk to them and you ask them anything, them they say, well, Paul said. And you say to them, da, 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 and them say, well, you know, Matthew said. And you say, then personally, and them say, well, you know, Peter said. And there's nothing you can ask them that you can get from them what they are saying, because they are not thinking. So they have nothing to say. They're like biblical robots. You push a button and them give you a biblical cliche or them quote somebody out of the Bible. Because why? We are told that the men who put down those writings were inspired men, and that their thinking was based upon inspiration. But true, the word sounds so fascinating to I and I. We don't bother even look it up. And we don't examine what does it mean to be inspired in your thinking. Was Garvey an inspired thinker? Was Diop, is Chick Diop an inspired thinker? Frances Cress Welsing, is she an inspired thinker? How do we define and determine who is an inspired thinker and whose writings are inspired? Because we get caught up on that inspiration talk. And so the book they give us now, the King James Version of Reality, is supposed to be penned by inspired men. So you're not supposed to question their thinking, because questioning their thinking now is questioning the inspirer. So the impression that no, the implication is that the inspirer is offended if you challenge the inspirer, the inspiration. In other words, no, psychologically, we mustn't question nothing that is considered to be inspired writings. Otherwise, we are going to be questioning the almighty inspirer. And we have to break away from that false logic. That is false logic. Because questions are established for clarity. And if there is this almighty creator, then the idea of becoming clearer in our knowledge should be forefront in that creator's thoughts. So we have to continue looking at inspiration. And then we look at the writings now that are provided by these men who are inspired. And the great inspirer, and the first one we have to look at is a man called Moses. Because it is the so-called inspiration of Moses and the writings why we hold on to certain stories as real. Why we embrace mythologies. Why we embrace fables. Because these writings we think are real. So whenever we begin to think for ourselves, we must begin to recognize what is reality and what is metaphysical, what is allegorical, what is symbolical. So unless we can address our thinking through those dimensions, we're always going to be trapped into what people tell us. So the thinking of Moses sets laws that govern black people. And in the reality, we don't even know if such an individual even really existed. Because according to the literature, when we think through the events that this man is supposed to engage in, over 50% of them are impractical. They're not able to be expressed in concrete reality. They're abstract thoughts. Crossing the Red Sea by opening it with a rod is an abstraction. Going on a mountain and conversing with a sound is an allegory. So unless we begin to think clearly and think logically, we'll not be able to dismiss things that are fables and myths and allegories and symbols. Because reality now we must define by the things that we can sense and the things that we can think through logically. Once the logical progression cannot be made, we have to let go of them ideas there and begin to revisit those thoughts. So we have to begin to separate reality from fantasy. And a lot of the writings that we have been given are based on fantasies, fables, fiction, imaginations. Black people have to reverse that backward process of thinking and go forward thinking logically, scientifically, practically, and let go of the superstition. Metamorphosis.
Drinking water from the fountain, drinking water from the fountain. While the birds in the trees are singing, that's a single garden cultivating. Using the lawn they're playing, chilling on the mountain chanting. Babylon in the city belongs. She said that she dreadlocks in the mountain wanting. Babylon lead us right into the mountain. When them come this side, just chanting. Whoa, da 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 do. Whoa, da 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 do. Chilling at the mountain chanting. Chilling at the mountain chanting. Drinking the water from the fountain. Drinking water from the fountain. Babylon coming at the mountain. Axie Rasta
Rasta man was one of the first set of man them upon this western plantation who began to think into the teachings that were being enforced by the plantation society. Began to really think through it. And even prior to the Rastaman in Jamaica, in North America, there's a black preacher man by the name of Nat Turner. Nat Turner was one of the man them who began to think about the nature of the book that they gave us to read as the Word of God. And they gave us that book not to read it, but to memorize and to believe it. So there was no intention for black people to think about what was in the book. The whole idea was to hear it, memorize it, and recite it. But within that process, there was many of I and I who had that natural ability to think. But through deprivation, got subdued. There's others of us now who got involved in the church. And the church, as the agent of enslavement, using that same book, had to give the black man the book to learn to recite it. But I and I, with our intuitive powers and ancient genetic memory, were able to read and comprehend. And in that reading and comprehension, we began to realize that there's certain things in that book that were what we call contradictory. Contradictory means that the thoughts no longer run logical. They collide in each other. There's no smoothness in thoughts. And one of the first examples of that is when you have to realize that in the condition of slavery, the slave is told to worship God. And at the same time, the slave sees the owner also worshiping God. And so the thinking slave begins to ask a question: how is it that I, as a slave, can be worshiping the same God as the owner? Now, those kind of thoughts are not encouraged, because those type of thoughts provoke the stability of the system. But Nat Turner began to ask those questions because he got into the clergy. Just like Sam Sharp, just like Paul Bogle began to question the nature now of this enslavement through thinking. The man himself think it out now, realize that something is not logical, something is illogical. And in searching for that illogical foundation, it took man and man to explore the Bible itself. And the dimension of the Bible now that was prohibitive is a realm that we call the deities. And I'm not supposed to have any thoughts on the deities. Deities meaning the forces that are beyond man in conception, in ideas. The forces that man is going to say it gives responsibility for the manifestation of the energies that surround us. So we get into them areas, black man not supposed to think. It is a white man who must give us his thoughts, and we all it. And so it happens in the King James Version, where they present a concept of an almighty creator, and they present a son that looked like a European. And the Rastaman had to ask the question, following up on Garvey's suggestion, that how is it our salvation can come through the alien who capture us? How is it possible? How can we think that there is salvation from the enemy? How can you think? That is backwards thinking. So it is the Rastaman who made a leap in his consciousness and began to switch psychologically from thinking that the Son of God was a European-looking man to the Son of God looking like an African. That is a mighty leap in thought. And up to today, it is still disturbing, because the program suggests that the Son of God must be a Caucasian image. And Rastaman think through it and realize that if the Almighty made people in image and likeness according to the book, then the Almighty should look like the Rastaman. And if the sun was projected with locks, then the son should look like the father, and the father should look like the Rastaman. Metamorphosis.
What's the matter, people? Solidarity. Solidarity. Oh. Everybody wants the same thing, don't they? Everybody wants a happy end. They wanna see the game on Saturday. They wanna be somebody's friend. Everybody wanna work for a living. Everybody want their children warm. Everybody wants to be forgiven. They want a shelter from the storm. Look at me, I hate the enemy. We walk on common ground. We don't need to fight each other. What we need. Solidarity. Oh, solidarity. Solidarity. Oh, yeah. Solidarity. Nobody likes to ask for money. Nobody likes to play the clown. Nobody likes to wait in a long line. Nobody likes being pushed around. Everybody wants a family protected. They want to express themselves. Everybody wants to live forever. Look at me, I ain't your enemy. Don't believe everything you hear. This is no time to fight each other. What we need. Solidarity. Solidarity. Oh, solidarity. Solidarity. Oh, yeah. Solidarity. 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 Oh, solidarity. Solidarity. Hey, people.
Yeah, the cries for solidarity amongst the people of black heritage. Yes, we have to move beyond this, I think, beyond just claiming African. Because the European now is calling himself an African by having children born there. The Chinaman is under the same process. Another 20 years from now, you have Chinaman born in Africa. They're going to claim to be African by nationality. Their racial identity will remain Chinese. Likewise, the European will remain Caucasian. But he's going to begin to infiltrate the whole idea of being African. So we have to move to leave him. Allow him with that. And let us move on to our greater identity, which is our blackness. Because black culture is global. The people who, the Sentinelese people who were in India, the black culture, who chased up the white man, who came with them Jesus. It's black culture. And they have 20,000 years of existence. So we have to maybe expand and break away from locking ourselves into this identity of being African. Because remember now, we are really Kemetic people. We are black people first before we were called Africans. It's a Roman term. It's an alien term, I'm saying, even though it may mean something great. So there are those who interpret Africa as meaning the cradle of mankind. Those say it come from the name of a Roman emperor, whatever it is. The people of the continent never called themselves Africans before the Europeans got there. People were within their own nations. The Fulani and the Mandingo and the various nations of black people. So our thinking is what we need to work on. And our thinking has been divided in a very deep way by religion. more so by the denominations within each religion. Because Islam seems to have just a few strands, but the Christian thing, man, every week a new strands form. A church of this and a church of that. And there's no end in sight to control the people's thoughts, because it all revolves around the people's thinking. They think that the writings in the book are the words of an almighty God. And this almighty God sent these words to inspired writers. And these inspired men, when you check them out in the literature, those men are really allegories. Men like Noah never existed in reality. The flood is an allegory. Much of the writings are allegorical. Much of the early writings are fables. But the writings impress the brain. And we have taken in those realities, taken in those writings as reality, without even questioning the nature of the writer. Because inspiration, we are being told now, comes from God. And I'm saying inspiration comes from any event, any environment, the ocean, an individual action. All things can provide inspiration. But they try to limit inspiration now to coming from this divine source. So now there's divine inspiration, which black people now are miles away from. So nobody in our black population has ever been divinely inspired to write something. So Garvey wasn't inspired divinely. What about, as I said, Diop? What about Professor Henry Clark? What about our great writers? Is it that they are so far away removed from divinities that divine writings are limited to these men that they give us in a book? It is time we stop and think. Think about it. We read of a writing about a creation when the writer was not there. So the writer gets these inspirations to write these writings. And I'm saying to we as original people, we have also had our inspirations. And we have our stories about creation long before this one was written. So we could break away from the spell. The spell that we're under by these writings. This ghost spell is a spell. There's a WhatsApp from Shawnette S. And Shawnette S asking a very interesting question, just saying, ponder this. Is a mirage real? A mirage now is like something that is normally generated through heat and distance. For example, you may be driving down the road and you look ahead and you see steam coming out. So they look like steam coming out of the road. And when you go down this, you don't really see the steam. Or there are situations where people are going through the desert and they see images of things. So the person wanting to know if these things are real. No, reality, no. It again is an issue. Because within the imagination, persons may think that the thing is real within their imagination, but sometimes other persons can't see what they are seeing in their imagination. Sometimes it's a collective thing. Sometimes it's an individual. So that could be something just within the own individual consciousness. Because in the external world, there is nothing really there. But in the world of the imagination, there is an impression that would make you want to think that it is real. So it's always a task to sort out reality from what is in imagination. Shawnette S. She also wants to know, where did I get my information about Bogle and Sam Sharp? How can I be sure that they existed? Well, to tell you the truth, I am a Bogle and enough question long time in terms of how the government present this man to us in his imagery and so on. But I think if you go into St. Thomas, the practical experience of the people will demonstrate that something happened, that there was a revolt, and that there was an uprising and thousands of people literally died. So that's how I would know, say, a man like Bogle did exist. And the evidence about the uprising of the plantations in Montego Bay would make me want to know that Sam Sharp, or such a person who did those things, did exist. So, she said further, in order to know beyond a shadow of a doubt, one has to have facts, evidence, and experience. And do we truly know about what was before our time? But this is why we have writers. And this is why we have to begin to put confidence now in the writers that we think will project the story in a beneficial way. Because the same story can be written from different perspectives. So historically, we have been fed our history written by Europeans. Over the last 50 years, we have been getting a rewriting by our own black scholars. Dr. Ben Yochanan, Henry Clark, Ivan Van Sertima. This is a cadre of black men now who have come forward with their own research in all the various fields. In other words, they don't just research history. They do linguistics, archaeology, paleontology, all the various disciplines to come to a conclusion that is not linear, it's not based upon a single line of thought, but a more holistic approach to knowing. We have to do the thoughts, we have to think. We have to think and be not fearless, be not fearful of thinking. We are also conditioned to think that somebody can hear our thoughts from 1,000,000 miles away. We are told that from your children, be careful what we think because Santa can hear us. Yeah, from early, we are programmed not to think. And then the religious world tells us not to think. So if you say a nice lady, don't think anything sexual or carnal because that's a sin. So thinking now, from that perspective, is attached to sin. The thing gets worse. Only I and I can change it. We have to unlearn and begin to learn to think. Metamorphosis.
Boy, skip a George. Dawn of the living dead.
love the children of Africa. Teaching the children. Oh, da 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 da. La da da da. Oi, black eye, black hair, black skin, black queen, stand majestic with the black king. Today I'll sing you a black song. You need to hear about beautiful black thing. Cause most time we hear about black, we hear about black magic and black witches. Blacklist, black book, black market, Black Friday, you spend off your black riches. I've never seen a doctor in black, nor seen a black pill to cure no black people. But I've seen bush doctors like Tash and Molly resurrect like a real black beetle. Malcolm, Marcus, Martin. When you see Walter Rodney, ask him how you not hear about how well laughing. So when the little offspring asking, tell them they never told us that black is beautiful. They never told us black is beauty. They never told us that black is beautiful. They never told us. They never told us that black is beautiful. Behave and I go on like you never spend 500 years on a farm. The same chain you are wearing and go on is another black life in Sierra Leone. Boy, they find out Mama Earth got gold then. They mine out Mama Earth black soul then. You work hard just forget a black card. Same card where you swipe.
What do you think? What do you think? What do you think about black? What are your thinking? Are your thoughts on black? You know, black is a term, but it appears in the language in different formats. In other words, different parts of speech. Black appears within the language. So you're thinking now, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts towards the whole idea of black? Do you think of darkness? Do you think of evil? Do you think of death? So we're talking about your thoughts and your thinking patterns as it revolves around the idea of black. And so the early teachings, both in school and church, is that you think about black in a negative way. If you see a cat that is black, you begin to think about bad luck. And that type of thinking now can lead to an event that you would define as bad lucked. In other words, now there's a relationship between your thinking and your destiny. I want the idea begin to just think about that for a while, because the whole idea is about thinking. That there's a relationship between your thinking and your destiny. So, again, to the idea of black and your attitude towards thinking that black is dirty, that black is inferior. And when you begin to think along the line of divinities and high orders of life energies, do you begin to think of black within those dimensions, or black get closed out? Or black is no longer prohibited? Black is prohibited from entering certain dimensions. So within our cosmology now, on our ideas of the divine and the gods and the creators, the angels that we are taught to think about, we think about them as white. And not just white, but perfect. This is the thinking that we are projecting now, on these images that are angelic and white. And when the brain is told to look into the opposite of that goodness and whiteness, we run up into blackness. And so psychologically now there's a rejection and a resentment to things that are black because of what we think. So we have to rearrest, we have to arrest our thinking, you know. We have to arrest our thinking and we have to order it to be reformed. Because it is really our thoughts that are really the movers. It is our thoughts that really move the mind, move our thinking. It's our thoughts that eventually transform itself into action. So, you're thinking about getting married. And so you think about getting dressed in full white. And the reason for your thinking is based upon the ideas that are attached to whiteness. And as you hear in the song, you never see a doctor in full black. It's a way of thinking. And at the same time, it's a way of maintaining a level of supremacy in ideology by those who colonize. You never think of an angel as white, as black. You never think of a big lie as white. A little white lie will work. We have to begin to think clearly. We have to begin to think of what we call the level of being critical. And critical thinking requires analysis. Critical thinking requires synthesis, meaning you're joining different aspects of an idea together. Critical thinking requires inferences, being able to pull an inference out of the reasoning. And critical thinking requires evaluation. So these are sequences and parts of thinking that we have to begin to become active in. We can't get lazy, because laziness is also another part of the slave. The lazy brain that is unwilling to think but wants solutions from other people's brain. So ultimately now, when we begin to think about black in the context of our social living, we realize that the program that we have been given for 2,000 years or more encourages us to think in the most negative way of things that are black. We even write it as a description rather than as a noun. So when Americans media want to show the equality of Caucasian people and Africans in America, they write Black American with a small b and white American with a small w, with the focus being American. So when you see the word Black American, you see a small black, capital A American, and small w, capital A American. That's an attempt to let the people think that they're all Americans. But that's using those terms in a descriptive way. It doesn't make the black a person. It simply describes the American. We need to move away from that description concept and begin to think of black as a person. So when you write the concept of the idea of a black man, the black must be in a capital B. Likewise, a black American, anybody, any person that is black, the language and the thinking should be projected in a capital. Because within the language, that's a sign that you recognize that you're referring to a person. Anything less than that, common letters, suggest the black as a condition or a description, which means we're not thinking as persons. So at that level, everything begins, at the level of our thoughts. And we express our thoughts through our writings. So our academics who are projecting this consciousness of being black, they must lead the way. Likewise, the journalists. We must see ourselves as persons, as people, when we talk about black, because we are changing our way of thinking. Metamorphosis.
WhatsApp continues to send forward some sounds. No name, but the writer is suggesting that the mind is powerful. The one before that, guess. Yes, the person was suggesting that. No, that one, not that one. All right. So really, what is it that is powerful? Is it the mind or is it the brain? Yes. The person was saying, interesting program. That means the mind is a very, very powerful. Well, I'm going to put it forward to you in a different way. Yes, Marie. What is very powerful? What is it that's really very powerful? Is it the mind or is it the brain? We have to begin to also make a distinction now in a very clear way. Is it the mind that is powerful or is it the brain? Are we born with a brain or are we born with a mind? Well, I don't want to say to the item now that within those two terms, they are closely related, but they're not the same. They're closely related. They're not the same. I make a distinction by recognizing that the brain is tangible and the brain is physical. And I think every individual is born with a brain, even the bird of a brain. But at the same time, we are all born within an environment that I'm going to call a mind field. We're born within a mind field. Another term for that is like we're born in an ocean, but the ocean is not H2O. The ocean is air. So within that now, I call that the mind. And it's from that energy field that we can pull energy within our brain. So every individual have access to the powers of the mind. Every individual have access to the environment. Even the environment suggests that there's a mental environs. So individually, our brains are all connected. What we need to do is learn how to tap into that mind field. How to connect our brain to the mind field that we can generate our actions. So the power really rests not just in the mind. It's like saying the power is in the ocean. But the power also dwells in the fish and the life forms that are within the ocean. And I'm saying, I and I as man, we are literally we're born in the ocean, within the whole amniotic fluid that we're into. We're born in an ocean. And we're actually living in an ocean. But I'm saying the ocean is not H2O. It's air. It's the same gases. It's the same gases that make up water that really make up air, and we are passing through. We no longer have the gills, we have lungs. But the power that drives us is the brain. And within the brain is the pilot. And the pilot in the brain is the eye. And the eye is located in the pineal gland. That is the location, that's where the eye rests. That is the base of the eye. So a lot of our foods that we eat, that they poison our system with, it really tamper with the pineal gland. So once we learn to modify and control the environment and let the pineal gland reveal itself, then our thoughts will be manifested in the greatest way and recognize our own power within. So it's not about mind power, it's more about brain power. Metamorphosis.
On top of the roof fighting their brothers.
Now there is a way within our culture where we say be careful of what you think, because what goes out comes back.
It's suggesting that the thoughts that we generate out of our brain, these waves, they leave our center of consciousness and go outward, like the waves in the ocean. But look as though anywhere them bounce up, they tend to want to return to the source. This is the impression we try to get when we talk about be careful of what you think, because the thoughts that you hold are the thoughts that will grow within you. So if you hold on to negative thoughts of others, you have to hold those thoughts within thyself, you know. So ultimately you are also growing those negative thoughts. So you have to be careful what you think. And you can also project thoughts. In other words, we should be able to manipulate thoughts, our powers of thinking. We're supposed to be able to plant a thought in the depth of our brain and leave it. And just same way we plant it into the earth, we should be able to return and visit it, and the thought has grown. Because ideas are like seeds. So it's our ability to think, which is maybe the equivalent to farming. You have to be working the soil. Let us use that analogy to thinking. It's working the soil. It's working your ideas. It's working out your thoughts. Revisiting them, checking to see if they're moving along the path that you have designed for them to actualize. Because ultimate activity within our thinking is to actualize our thoughts. So it's a practice thing. If we were doing these things from we are youths, if we were doing these things as habit as children, rather than singing nursery rhyme and talking rubber-dub foolishness, we would be greater thinkers. And once we are become great thinkers, we don't need anybody to lead us into no path of destruction. We wouldn't be dependent on leaders. The leaders will be dependent on what we are thinking. And we'll be able to question them because we too are thinking. We need a thinking society. We need a thinking population. We need thinking individuals. Metamorphosis. Hey, Sean, it is. I have to talk to you off ear, you know, because you have enough things, you know. So, listen now. That one night before going to bed, you pray to God, silently, of course, and ask Him to show you your guardian angel in a dream. And she said that in the dream that she saw a short black man in Africa standing and looking at me. So, Sean book up a black man, African, as a guardian angel. But I have to serious, I don't know what to say. I have to leave that one out there. Anyway, another person said that person's thoughts are with them constantly until death. And we will not rise above our minds, but rise as high as our minds have risen. Heights of superstition and mental malfunction is our problem. All right. So we're trying to encourage, basically, individuals to shake off the fear of thinking and think you're going to get mad. You'll get mad because you think certain things. Madness is not a problematic situation. The greatest problem is insanity. Because madness simply means you are thinking beyond and outside what is normally prescribed. That is okay. If your behavior remains what people will call normal, your thinking can always go outside the box and return. Insanity now is when you no longer control your thinking. When you no longer control your hygiene, you no longer control your bodily uses, that means you're moving into insanity. So we're not afraid of being mad. Black people, not afraid of that. Because genius is what the Europeans call mad. Genius. And because they don't want to recognize the genius in black people, any move that looks like it's challenging their order, them say we're mad. And on that basis, they create institutions like Bellevue to get us on the prescription drugs and begin to inject our people. Some of our greatest thinkers have been put into Bellevue. Think about it. Some of our greatest revolutionary thinkers, the state put them into Bellevue because they call that mad thinking. And they don't want the population to think mad because we're going to rise up in our mad thinking and overthrow the colonial forces. This is what we're going on. Fearless about the words. Fearless about the words because the conditions we're under done bitter already. It done brutal already. There's no necessary reason to fear words. Words that are coming out of the mouths and the pens of the colonizers. No fear. I want to tell you how serious the power of thinking is. This morning, no, let's not lie. Yesterday morning, Sunday, I, for the first time, listened to an interview. There's a program called Face the Nation in the United States. Every Sunday, the leading politicians tend to go on it and so on. And for the first time, I am hearing this brother named Mike Pence speak. For the first time. And when I hear this brother's thoughts, I now realize that there is worse than Trump. Yeah, for the first time I hear the interview with this brother here, and this brother here have the ability to articulate what Trump can't do. He has the language, he have the defense mechanism, have everything in place. And if this man can articulate clearly what Trump is bubbling over, there are a set of men who really, to me, have them hands on the power. So, the thinking that's coming out of the White House is not something that is bumbling and dysfunctional as people want to think. It's organized thinking. It is thinking that has an agenda and has a motive. And what I heard Pence utter out and Face the Nation in justifying everything that the Trump administration stands for is frightening. And for those who think that it can't get worse than Trump, I'm telling you, Pence would have run America into the cents. Trump talking about the dollars, Pence would have run it into the pennies. And it's all about analyzing the man them thinking. Their thinking is to return America to a state wherein white people are dominant. The idea in their thinking is to make America white again. And so black people who are unwilling to read the writing on the wall and are willing to delude themselves into beliefs that Martin Luther King's dream will manifest. I'm saying to the item today, that dream is what the white Americans celebrate. I heard Mike Pence quote Martin Luther King yesterday. And he quoted King in reference to Trump, saying that both men are identical because they both are promoting and inspiring change. I tell you them now, listen to the man them thoughts. Listen to the man them thoughts and begin to think for yourself. And if you think deep enough within your own black self, you realize that being American is a national identity. We have to move towards our racial identity. And we have to recognize our blackness, which precedes being African. And we've realized the continent of the black people, the continent of Kemet. We have to recognize home, land now, in the way all other groups recognizing home. The American and the blacks, the Americans who call themselves black Americans, will realize that that continent is not your home. And so you're not able to be deported the way they deport other black people. They put you in prison. But the choice is here. I see Whoopi Goldberg is coming around to reality. Whoopi Goldberg is deciding that perhaps it's time for her to leave America. And if she, with her money, read the climate and thinking that it's time to leave, well, you think about it as well. Metamorphosis. Hail up Ross Triss, hail up all the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut listenership. Hail up listenership across the states of America, from California straight through the south into the northeast. I hope you'll be able to hold off that snowstorm and hold a vibration that is positive. Hail up all the ones and ones in Canada. Yes, further north, deeper down into the north. We are the ones on the continent of the Europeans who are tapped into Size FM. Here those are into the UK. And we hear all the brethren and sisters now who lock into Metamorphosis through the Facebook page, our African brethren in Ghana and Kenya and Rhodesia and South Africa. Whole heap of people from the continent tuning into the Metamorphosis and getting a chance to think outside of the dogma of Christendom and outside of the tenets of Islam, thinking into the blackness, into the reality, into the cosmos. Here are those on Jamaica land that we should love when the thinking is more upright. We think leaders are people who should upgrade the thinking of the people around them. That's what we need. That's the type of leaders we want. Leaders who can upgrade the thinking of the people. So, Port Antonio, Titchfield Hill, Cliffords, here all those ones and one. Here the people in Harbourview, here the people in St. Thomas, here the people in St. Mary, Buff Bay, West Portland, this Eastern Confederation of Culture. Heal up the rest of the island. St. Elizabeth and Manchester and St. Catherine and Westmoreland and those places. James and Trelawney. And of course, we heal all those in the Caribbean. Sister Islands and Brother Islands and so on and so forth. We want a thinking population in the 2019. We want to upgrade our self-esteem. And self-esteem will remain low if we don't upgrade our thinking capacity, upgrade the intellect, that nobody can call you idiot, that you can think critically, you can analyze and you can compare and contrast and you can evaluate and come to conclusions within reason. Because reasoning, is a process. It's a process. And it's nothing to be ashamed of when you're not very strong in it. It's about practice. Yes. Practice makes permanent. Not perfect. Practice makes permanent.
In the rain, sha-la-la-la-la. There's some little girls and boys in the rain, sha-la-la-la-la. Want some understanding, deep understanding.